It's a popular event at festivals all over the country, loved and hated in equal measures, and even feared by some. But behind the bells and ribbons, Morris dancing has a long and sometimes mysterious history, of which takes us into the distant past, to a world of magic, folk custom and lost tradition. The origin of the Morris dancing we see today is shrouded in time, difficult to pin down, and, like the dancers themselves, leads to the researcher going around in circles. Still, the earliest written record of the term Morris dance dates from 1448, where the Goldsmiths' Company of London paid 7 shillings to a team of Morris dancers. Further similar records can be found, dating to the late 15th century, and in all cases we see slight variations in terms. Moresque dance, Morris dance, often for those dancing in the royal courts, and Morris dance, thought to be a corruption of the term Moorish, meaning the Muslim populations of northwest Africa and into Europe by the Iberian Peninsula. Originally, the indigenous Maghrebine Berbers, the Moors, ruled Spain from 711 to 1492, and some believe that the wider customs and dances of the time may be something of the origin of the later English Morris dance.
Akarsuyun gidişine yüzerseniz daha rahat olur. Ama terse yüzerseniz çok daha zor olur, yorulursunuz. Bu da aynı. Dünya dönüyor, sen de dönüyor. Bütün zerreler dönüyor, sen de dönüyorsun.
In this ancient Sufi ceremony of the Sama, we are introduced to the practice of whirling, wherein those dressed in symbolic attire may whirl to a musical accompaniment in a type of physical meditation, thought to imitate the motion of the cosmos, and inducing within the dancer the abandonment of the ego and the focusing of the mind onto the spiritual. An Egyptian variation of this dance, known as the Tanoura, sees the dancer wearing colourful skirts representing the Sufi orders, and further interpretations of folk dance have seen ribbons, fans and other elements added as the dances turn from the spiritual to the world of entertainment. If we combine this with the wider custom of traditional sword dancing, of which is seen in these cultures, and draw parallels with the sticks used in the Morris, then it is easy to see why some believe that this may be the origin of the popular dance, especially since further historic records see Morris dancing referred to as Morisco dancing, a term meaning little Moors, and referring once again to the Moorish peoples, and the descendants of whom, of which the Roman Catholic Church and the Spanish Crown commanded to be converted to Christianity. However, there is no solid evidence to suggest a connection between the historic, mystical dances of these groups and that of Morris dancing, and attempting to trace the history of the term is fraught with difficulty. That said, there was a 15th century fashion for the spectacle of Spanish and later Italian folk dances. And once again the Great London Chronicle records spangled Spanish dancers performing for King Henry VII at Christmas of 1494. Whatever the truth, by the turn of the 16th century, Morris dancing was more widely recorded, and not only in the courts of royalty. William Kemp, one of the original players in the dramas of Shakespeare, performed an alleged 9 days' wonder in February and March of 1600, wherein he Morris danced all the way from London to Norwich, a distance of over 100 miles. This journey, of which took 9 days spread over several weeks, saw crowds of spectators taking to the streets to cheer him on. Sadly, the actual form and structure of this dance, as well as many others prior to the 17th century, are unknown. But we do know that as time progressed, Morris dancing began to change from the courtly performers to the rural customs of agricultural England. And it is here where things truly begin to mould into the form of the dance of which we know today. It's worth noting that here in the rural landscape, Morris dancing became as varied as the local areas in which it was performed. And it seems clear as a student of folklore that the meanings of these dances were a far cry from those of the Berbers and the Moors, and neither were they imitations of the royal courtly dances imported from Europe. On Plough Monday, for example, the plough itself would be blessed as a symbolic beginning of the agricultural year. As part of this celebration, the plough would be wheeled from house to house in the village, dressed in ribbons and often accompanied by music and dancing, as well as, curiously enough, an old man dressed as a jester or a fool, and a young man dressed as a girl and known as Betty or Molly. They would then dance together and sing and dance rough songs and dances of energetic routines around the plough and throughout the village, in a custom of which was known as Molly dancing. This name, Molly, for the boys in drag, could be another corruption of the term Morris, and brings us back yet again to the mysterious origins of the practice, of which here appear to be shrouded in the ancient alchemical and mystical traditions of duality and of the coming together of opposites, be they a god and goddess, a sun and a moon, or an old man and Molly dancing around the plough. Molly dancing was also a type of guising, or disguising oneself for the purposes of entertainment, performance, and sometimes even for stranger reasons. Mumming, the tradition of costume plays, of which often accompanied Morris dancing, may suggest a spiritual connection to these rituals of the plough and the season. They can either be disguising themselves from the spirits of nature, such as fairies, elves, and the will-o'-the-wisp, or becoming like them in order to commune with them or to pass through the veil. They may go door to door, just as with the plough, being given donations of food or ale in order to ensure deliverance from evil and a fresh new harvest to come. A practice of which has clear similarities to the trick-or-treat phenomena of modern Halloween, of which of course falls on the eve of a festival itself, that of Samhain, where Morris dance and mumming plays may once have been witnessed all throughout rural Britain. I visited this mumming play, where an ancient tavern supplied both spectator and dancer with copious amounts of ale, and the mumming and dancing went on long into the night.
To the fleece and the pail, may the dark never conquer and the light never fail.
These type of events show up in the earliest recorded mentions of Morris dancing, wherein guising, sword dancing, and other similar activities have been shown to be performed much in the same way as the event I attended. Couple this with the local variations in dance, of which often told stories of which are long forgotten to us, and yet include clear invocations to the harvest and the spirits of the earth. And some researchers have quite reasonably seen more than meets the eye to these coloured ribbons, bells, and rhythmic movements of the Morris dance. This is no more obvious than in the Beltane tradition, wherein the Morris is still very popular today, as well as the dance around the maypole, wherein the twirling of coloured ribbons creates a vortex of colour like a spectrum, around a totem placed deep into the womb of the earth, and representing a very fertile and ancient rite, the rebirth of the summer, the coming of the May Queen and the Green Man. This event, of which I attended earlier this year, saw the maypole and the Morris dance combined with an invocation of the summer by the village's very own May Queen.
Mine is the beauty of the green earth and its fullness, for I am the bringer of all fruitfulness unto thee. From the moon rays shaft of silver power, from the green leaf breaking from the bud, from the seed that springeth unto flower, and the life that courses through the blood.
The association of Beltane with the Morris is long indeed, and in fact, even Shakespeare wrote of this in All's Well That Ends Well, where he writes, as fit as a Morris for May Day. Oddly enough though, some may suggest that the whirling ribbons and dance of the maypole, of which originally signified a living tree, is similar once again to the whirling dervish of the moors. And thus, the researcher finds themselves going in a complete circle, just like the dances themselves, with regards to finding its mysterious origin. But if any of this is true, it's unlikely that those performing the dances in the rural villages of Britain knew anything about it. But that's not to say that they did not view the dances and their choreography as still having more meaning than simply entertainment. In fact, in the 17th century, Morris dancing became associated with the Whitsun celebration, and especially that of so-called Whitsun ales, an old custom wherein churches held festivals, traditionally over Whitsuntide, with a heavy focus on the drinking of ale and of making merry, combined with the holiness of Pentecost, wherein the Holy Spirit descends into the disciples and followers of Christ, therefore mixing the joy of the carnival with the solemn communion with God. Whatever the truth, Morris dancing continued to be popular throughout the years, despite falling out of favour during the time of Cromwell, and being actively discouraged, if not completely banned, by the Puritans. In fact, it remained an almost constant presence around the country, right until the coming of the Industrial Revolution, of where the sweeping social and political changes saw many folk customs, including Morris dance, begin to fade away. Certain folklore collectors, such as Ella Mary Leather of Herefordshire, saw this decline in the traditional ways and decided to write down the beliefs and superstitions of the villagers into her book, of which is known as the Folklore of Herefordshire, and includes, amongst other things, the movements, lyrics and arrangements of the Morris dances. By Boxing Day of 1899, however, Morris dancing was beginning to make a comeback, helped in part by these folklore books, and also by Cecil Sharp, of whom, when visiting a friend in Oxford and witnessing a dance, became intrigued and decided to record and collect the dances himself, as well as their arrangements and choreography, just like Mrs. Leather had done before him. His work was helped along by the founder of the dressmaking outfit the Esperance Club, Mary Neal, and of Herbert McIlwain, the club's musical director. Neal simply wanted dances for her girls to learn and perform, and so these ancient works were brought back to life by the young women of London, their choreography intact, but their meaning almost certainly lost. The Morris Renaissance continued, and by the turn of the 20th century, many Morris teams, or sides as they are properly known, began to be formed. In 1934, the Morris Ring was begun to document and map the many growing Morris dancing sides, and by the late 1950s, the number of sides had exploded, with women's and men's and mixed sides showing up all over the country. Today, the dances continue to enjoy this renaissance, with the fairs and festivals of rural Britain almost seeming incomplete if Morris dancers are not present. Perhaps it is futile to debate the true origin of Morris dancing, for it may simply be found in the connection made by the sticks of the dancers, of which are clashed, interlocked, and brought together, often before joining into one at the conclusion of the dance. When I tried Morris dancing myself, I was struck by the physical vibration and connection made by the clanging of these sticks with my companions. This, in many ways, speaks to us about the origins and purpose of dance in itself. Today, many historians believe that dance may be as old as humanity itself, and even with our hominid ancestors before us. Indeed, the Bhimbekta rock shelters in central India show marvellous cave paintings of around 10,000 years of age, and some of them seem to quite clearly depict dancing and the connection made by the people of whom do it, just as I could feel a physical connection with the clashing of sticks on the Morris side. It is, of course, a human story. Dance makes for communication without the need for words or language. It tells stories and legends, and perhaps more importantly, brings us together, like the Morris dancers do, interlocking their arms, sticks, and ribbons. Therefore, these dances tell the story of us. Their original meanings may be lost in time, and yet they hint at things of which we all know. Things like the seasons, of birth and death coming together, our fears and dreams, and an awareness of something greater than ourselves. In other words, they tell us not only of historic and esoteric customs and rituals, but simply of what it means to be human and to come together. Each of us moving to our own rhythmic sway, upon a stage set by whirling stars, themselves dancing to the melodies of time.